of history's most notorious villains, Adolf Hitler has been the focus of many historical studies since the end of the Second World War in 1945. Historians and forensic experts alike will never stop digging into the deepest crevices of the Holocaust in an attempt to uncover the greatest secrets of the man who led Nazi Germany. There will always be a desire to discover the mind of Adolf Hitler, and there will always be a desire to encounter the thoughts behind the Holocaust. When volumes upon volumes of Hitler's personal diaries were said to have been found, after having been privately stored in a home in West Germany after their recovery from a plane wreck, media sources all around the world were ready to buy publishing rights, and a small discovery was quickly turning into a multi-million-dollar business in the 1980s. The creation of what would have been one of the greatest discoveries of all time began in the home of Konrad Kujau in West Germany. Kujau had been living a life of crime since his early adulthood, and he was an avid collector of Third Reich artifacts and relics. He made a living by selling his Nazi memorabilia, which led to his discovery of the huge market for such items and the high demand that they were in. He quickly realized that his profits could be doubled, even tripled, if he were to use his criminal skills to create new artifacts and to sell them as if they were authentic pieces from World War II. At first, he took on smaller projects such as insignificant poems by prominent Nazis, including Hitler himself, and smaller artistic pieces such as sketches and drawings by Nazi artists. For a while, these projects satisfied Kujau's love for historical forgery, but soon he would realize that the bigger you go, the more you make. Upon this realization, he soon got the idea to create personal diaries of the German Chancellor himself. He completed a few volumes of the diaries to be sold to a few of his regular clients, but once word traveled to media companies, experts began looking into the authenticity of the documents. An investigative reporter from Stern magazine named Gerd Heidemann was the first to catch wind of the diaries, and he immediately began to personally look into the story behind the documents. Now, Kujau was no amateur. The story of the plane crash in 1945, where the diaries were supposedly found, was all true, and Heidemann was otherwise unable to find anything that seemed out of the ordinary. He brought the story to his superiors and got a grant for 2 million francs to pay for all of the documents. Once the deal between Kujau and Heidemann was finalized, Stern magazine was in possession of the diaries. And at that point, media sources from around the world began sending over its analysts to begin the examination of the documents. German-American Gerard Weinberg, working for American media source Newsweek, was among 3 initial analysts to examine the diaries. Already a specialist on the World War II era, Weinberg was able to make his conclusions after extensive yet specific research on the mind of Adolf Hitler. My research on the Hitler Diaries was mainly focused on the stories within the writings and how true they and authentic they really are. While some of the things did surprise me, I was fascinated to read some of the things and some of the secrets that we wouldn't normally know from your normal history books or your history classes. And it's truly a fascinating thing to discover reading these diaries. On balance, I'm inclined to consider the material authentic as a result of it being consistent with history, while at the same time there being a certain level of surprise, a certain level of unexpected things that you would normally read in someone's diary. One thing that I did find really interesting was on each page of Hitler's diary, he had a signature at the bottom as if he was writing to someone each time. And this is something that a forger really would not risk doing. I mean, if you're a forger, as some of the skeptics are thinking now that these documents are fake, I would disagree, because not only because of the authenticity of the material, but also because a forger wouldn't take certain risks in order to expose his secret, and one of those being, risking a signature on every single page. But my conclusion of the research is that the material is authentic and truly a fascinating thing to read. Weinberg's opinion was accepted by Stern and other media companies, that is, until further investigation took place. Stern decided to end the skepticism of the diaries by sending a few volumes to the Bundesarchiv, or Federal Archives of West Germany, so they could test the authenticity of the documents. The verdict was delivered soon thereafter that the writings were indeed forged. Forensic scientists and analysts then worked to confirm the decision, and they had no trouble doing so. Handwriting expert Kenneth W. Rendell worked to validate the discovery by conducting his own independent analysis on the samples. Well, I didn't find any difficulty in disproving the authenticity of the writing in the Hitler Diaries. I was able to, in my research, to compare Hitler's true handwriting from actual documents to that of the writing that was found in the diaries, and I conclude that they were bad forgeries, but the concept itself was a phenomenal hoax. And with the exception of imitating Hitler's habit of slanting his writing diagonally as he writes across the page, the forger failed to observe or to even imitate the most fundamental characteristics of Hitler's handwriting, and therefore it was fairly simple for me to conclude that the writing was not the same as Hitler's actual true handwriting. And so you can see here in this document, the one on the left being the true Hitler piece, whereas on the right it is the work of the forger. You can see on the left there's a consistent diagonal slanting from left to right down the page, and while on the right you can tell that there's been a slight mistake in that he doesn't have that same consistent slanting. There's a hint of it on the toward the end of each sentence. But in other documents, it is easier to tell that he did use this imitation. But in this one, it is clear that the forger did not have that same slanting habit. So this document, among many other documents I was able to examine, were great helps in my conclusion that the decision made by the government of Germany was indeed correct, in that the forgeries were indeed forged.